Welcome back to another episode of This Old Shop. Today's the day I've been looking forward to for quite a while. It's the day we get rid of our conduit obstacle course, the conduit that used to be in our old walls and now that it's in the middle of the shop. Well, we're going to go ahead and move all of our electrical up here, wire in these lights, and abandon all those and cut them down. So let's get started on that so we have a wide open shop. We started by running our conduit out of our electrical room across the back wall of the shop. Now we're going to connect it to our existing conduit that's up there that's feeding this row of lights. Unfortunately, because we're adding lights to this row, our spacing isn't going to be the same as it was with our old light setup. So we have to add a couple eyelets here for our lights to hang on and a few boxes. And we're going to have to relocate some of the ones that are already up there. So we got our first one in there. Now we can connect our conduit to our existing line. Probably shouldn't have screwed that box in there, but we'll get it in there. We'll take that bend out later. Probably when we put the clamp on there to hold it up. Now we can open up our box and see what's inside. I'm hoping it's just the end of our circuit, otherwise there's going to be a surprise in there. And it is just the end of our circuit. So we'll tighten up our conduit that we just stuck in there. Click. Now we can put our eyelet in for our new lights. This box happened to be in the right spot, but we're going to change it anyway. We upgraded our lights. They're a little more powerful, and since this is in the wash bay, we want our detailer to be able to see what he's doing. So he's got no excuses. Go ahead and disconnect our light. We're going to put these up in a different place in the shop. They're not going to waste. And no, the lights didn't just go out. The roaming gnome closed the overhead door and the camera just hasn't adjusted yet. And probably won't before we're done. Since all of our lights are in a straight line, moving from one to the next is pretty easy. The roaming gnome's skid steer driving ability does include going forward and backwards. So he just moved me from one to the next. Unfortunately, that means I don't get to climb up and down the Bobcat like I'm a 5-year-old at a playground. So the safety experts should be happy about that. Of course, they'll be unhappy because I was up in the bucket of our scissor lift here while it was moving. But we're on to our next one. This run a conduit, so a little bit too long. I have to take it apart and put in a box. And I went around and put tape there so that I remember where each one went. And it was harder than you think, trying to keep track of where they belong. Put our eyelet in there, make sure it's nice and straight. And we need to trim off a little bit of our conduit so our box will fit. And we'll put our box on here before we put it up there. Can you see this? Connect it to our old box. And go ahead and screw it up there. We can take the other piece out, connect it to the other box, and tighten it down. So we connected our conduit to that line up there. We put in our boxes where we're going to need them in that line, and then we connect this line. If you see up there, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a bunch of wires hanging out. That's where everything ended. The power actually came up through the floor here and went up there, so we just came down that line that there was already wires in for the lights and supplied the power there. And it's kind of a good thing that we did because they came from all of these, and these wires, we actually only got 3 of them out of here and they were all corroded. They did abandon some of these, and I'm thinking it's because they did have water problems in there. I mean, they run under the concrete. It's not sealed, so if the ground gets saturated, water gets in there and just chews up these lines. So I'm kind of glad that we ended up doing this, even though it was a little bit more work up in the ceiling. Hopefully it won't be a problem. We did run our line down here to our switch, so now we're just going to connect the power at both ends, start wiring up our lights, and everything hopefully will work, and we can start cutting these down. Now we can connect our wires that we just ran through our fresh conduit to the box that we had put up way back in like the first or second video of the shop, back when the upstairs was 5 times the size it is now. Tuck them up there.
And since our new feed for this is up in the ceiling, we can pull out the old one. The blue one is the feed for those lights, and the red, I believe, is for the outlets, and they don't want to come out. And these all used to be in that one big wall, the blue wall that ran across the shop, and they went from one to the next all the way down. So if we removed one of these, we had to change the entire circuit over. So removing one was as good as removing all of them. So they're all going away. I'm not going to spend too much time here. Just want to see if I can get some of the wires out of there, but it doesn't look like it. I think in total I got 4 wires out. They were all tangled, glued, corroded in there. I don't know. But I got a way to remove them. Just gonna cut them down. Wires and all. Timber. And for those of you that don't know how conduit is made, it actually comes from conduit forests, such as this one. Now this is not a mature forest, so they're only about 4 feet in length. But some of the larger forests will get up to 10 feet in length. Then they're harvested and moved to your local hardware store. We have another small conduit forest here to remove. And one last conduit forest. This one's a little more dense than the other two, and also has some concrete that's been growing on it, which is just another part of the harvesting process for conduit. So we'll bust out that concrete and chop down our conduit. Now we can start installing our new lights. We'll hook them to the eyelet we installed earlier. We'll wrap the wire around our conduit so it's not dangling. Run it through our box. We'll tighten up our link that holds our light to our eyelet. Apparently I'm really concerned that it might loosen up. Connect our wires and our ground. Connect the ground to the ceiling. How ironic. And we'll test it. Flip the switch on and hopefully it goes on. Well, that's a good sign. Put our cover back up here. And hopefully we won't have to see this again. Now on to our next one. Pretty much the same way we just did the last one. And that one works too. We're 2 for 2. Throw the cover on this one. And on to our next one. And my custom built scissor lift also includes a mini fridge stocked with energy drinks. So highly caffeinated Scott's going to do this one for us. Same way as the uncaffeinated Scott did it, just a little bit faster. And this will be the last one you have to sit through. We are going to put 2 more in this row, so there'll be 5 lights where there used to be 3. And in addition to having 2 extra lights in this row, these are 200 watt when the old ones were 150. So they're a little bit brighter. And we're 3 for 3.
We have a new home for the painting gnomes. Gnomes not included. It's a 24.5 foot long, 14.5 foot wide, and 9 feet tall AmeriCare spray booth. So should be plenty of room to paint whatever we need to paint. And I'm not ready for it just yet, but the deal was just too good to pass up. I saw it on Facebook Marketplace, the price kept dropping and dropping, and well, I seized the opportunity. Bought it for basically scrap value. The only problem was I had to have it out of there in 1 day. So I had 1 day to prep for it, and that's the day I looked at it, measured it, saw if it would fit, and had to pick it up the next day. Which is why I got it so cheap, because not many people can organize that. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if it weren't for Scott Flanagan Landscape. Link to his channel is up there somewhere, because he loaned me his trailer so that we could truck all this home. We actually used a Bobcat to take it all apart, and that was on my trailer, so I had no room for everything, and I didn't want to make multiple trips because it was about 80 miles away. So we actually got there, it was fully assembled, and we disassembled it, loaded it up, brought it down here, all in 1 day. 5 guys, a Bobcat, and a whole lot of Archimedes style lifting. But wait, there's more. Not only did we get a spray booth, but we also got a mixing room. I think this is actually one of the walls of the mixing room. A couple doors here for the front of our spray booth. But yeah, the 11 by 7 mixing room will be great for us. This goes somewhere up on the top, and we did kind of label things on how to put it back together. At least we started to. By the halfway through the day, we just kind of were just getting it out of there because, like I said, I had one day to get it gone, and that's what I did. It's not the first spray booth that I've ever disassembled and transported, but it'd be the first one I ever put back together, if I put it back together. We have all of our lights in the back of this truck, our exhaust fan, and a bunch of the electrical. Pretty much everything that we took down, we brought with us. There's buckets of screws and everything else. I wish I could have filmed taking it all apart. I heard it was pretty epic, at least from the spectators. But unfortunately, I'm only one person, so I was focused on this, and I was under, a time constraint, and I just needed to get it done. I really wish I had filmed it because it would help in putting it back together. But maybe everybody else that helped will have an idea how it goes back together. And not only did Scott loan me his trailer, but he actually dropped it off at the site, and he was just gonna hang out for a little bit. 15 minutes turned into a couple hours, and pretty soon he had stayed the entire day. So it was like having two of me and a bunch of laborers. So it worked out great. So hopefully he remembers how some of this goes back together, because to me, the day was just a blur. All I know is it ended up here, and that was my goal, and we'll figure out how to put it back together later, one way or another. It may not look like it originally did. But now it's time to get everything unloaded. I guess I can film some of that because there's no time crunch here. So, and the roaming gnome had this crazy idea that we should clean all this stuff before we put it back together. So I guess that's what we're gonna do. Not me. And he also proposed that at the end of the day, after dismantling this thing, driving down here. Yeah, I was in no mood to hear any more about work, so. And I know what you might be thinking. Scott, that load looks like it's pretty wide. Did you have all the proper permits for that? Our biggest challenge today is just gonna be getting this big piece off of here without destroying it. And then once that's off of there, it's just individual pieces that are all inside. We took it all apart piece by piece, but this was a whole lot of pieces, and it also was giving us kind of a way to transport it, stuff everything inside. So it kind of worked out. If we would have taken all this apart, we would have had quite a mess of Jenga or Tetris or whatever on the back of the trailer. So let's get it unstrapped and get it off of here so that the roaming gnome can start cleaning. And it is a lot cleaner than it was when we started. We probably did lose a good 50, 60 pounds of dust. Every time I hit a bump, there was a big, huge cloud of dust behind me. So I hope they had the windows up in the truck behind me because, well, otherwise the forever truck's gonna be a little dirty inside.
Even though the ceiling of our paint booth is only 9.5 feet tall, the duct in the back is actually 13 feet tall, 14.5 feet wide, and 3 feet deep. So how do you get this big piece of steel off the trailer? Well, if you happen to have a hookup at Scott's Lumber Emporium, you build yourself a big wooden 2x10 handle. So that's what we did. And now we're going to test the structural integrity of said handle. We did take some of the panels out of there. There's actually 2 layers in there. So we took the panels off the first layer by hand, just carried them all out. And you can kind of see them back there stacked up against the wall. Now we're going to lift it off of here so that hopefully we can get the rest of the panels out from under it. We have 2x10s on the front of it, which is actually on the bottom, and so that it'll slide on there without damaging the booth. And we just lifted up a corner, slid them under there, screwed them on through the screw holes that actually are supposed to hold it together. I just screwed it into the boards. Now we're going to push it off the other side. It doesn't want to slide. And the forks are going to start poking holes. So we're just going to put a 2x10 over there and push on that. Hopefully that gives us enough to push it off the other side of the trailer. Take the fork so that we're pushing on that 2x10. And there we go. Now we just need to slide the booth off to the other side until at least part of it hits the ground, and hopefully we can lift it off before we run out of room between the trailer and the Bobcat. Try lifting it up and see if we made it far enough. In addition to being heavy, awkward, and a little bit fragile, this thing is very unstable. So when it's standing up, it doesn't take much to knock it over. So we're going to have to figure out a way to keep it from falling back down after we lift it up. There's a couple pieces underneath that were going to be in our way, wouldn't let us slide past. So we're going to slip them out of there and go stack them up against the wall so we don't damage them. Those pieces that are stacked up on the trailer, those are actually the intake duct for the top of the booth. It just sits on top of it. That much I do remember. I think we got all the pieces out of the way that were in danger.
I'm in danger!
Now we can keep lifting and see if we can get this thing off of there. We have touchdown. The bottom corners are on the ground now. And we didn't even run out of room. Still got some room there. So we're going to push it a little bit further. Now we can reposition the Bobcat because it is sitting on the trailer and the ground. We'll slide it to the end of the forks. Now we can start going up. This is where our handle comes in handy. Unfortunately, our handle and forks aren't long enough, so I'm not going to be able to stand it up completely with the trailer in the way. So we're just going to move the trailer because now it's not sitting on the trailer anymore. It's more like a bridge, like London Bridge, so hopefully it doesn't fall down. Because I didn't climb up the Bobcat earlier to do the lights, you know I had to find another excuse to do it. We're going to strap this thing to our forks, because when I stand this thing up, it's going to want to tip over backwards, and I kind of want to stop that. So we're just going to attach it to our forks so that it won't go over the other way. The tow rope is all we need. And we're done. Now we'll move it over into the corner so it can sit there for a little while and hopefully not be on our way. And we can hand unload all the rest of the pieces and somewhat organize them.
Our second dumpster is being dropped off today, so we can go ahead and get rid of this little stash that we have over here in the corner. This is all the rejects from Scott's Lumber Emporium, so we don't need it anymore. We're just going to toss it. And since the dumpster is going to be here, we'll have some extra room. We're going to start pulling everything else that we need to dispose of off the walls, the drywall, and insulation, all that kind of good stuff. And then we'll restock Scott's Lumber Emporium.
First, we're going to remove our last remaining door. It's been a trooper. We've dropped quite a few things against it. Still haven't broken that glass. Leave it to me to almost drop it as we're removing it. We'll put it over here and save it for later. Should be safe over here, right? Now we can go ahead and remove our door frame. We're just going to pry it right out of the studs. We should be able to reuse that. We'll put it over at the door. Now we have to remove part of this wall. First, you take off the structural paneling. Call it that because, well, it was holding up the wall. I guess you don't need any cripple studs above your header when you have a 2x4 header. I know it's not load bearing, but no wonder that wall was sagging in the middle. Say it with me. Somebody's been here before. We're gonna cut our wall into pieces. It's kind of a big wall to take down in one piece, and we have quite a few obstacles in our way. Another cut here where our other office wall used to be. And one more cut on the bottom, and we should have some manageable pieces here. Some of our obstacles include building supports, gas lines, and a drop ceiling on the other side, and even a car. If you're wondering why I didn't remove the gas line, it's because I'm procrastinating. Cut me some slack. I'll do it eventually, much later than I should have. We got our wall removal tool. Knock down all the nails that are holding it into the floor. And now it's going to be a wall holding tool. I don't want it falling over and taking out our drop ceiling or the grand am that's still in the showroom. Try and break the drywall out of here and get this half of the wall out. And apparently that's structural paneling as well. That's what's holding everything together. We have some more conduit that comes up through our floor that's in the middle of this wall. So we're going to knock that out of there. We're going to knock the bottom of the wall free from the concrete. But since our wall removing tool is currently holding it up, we have to do this manually. Can't say I'm disappointed. The manual way is very stress relieving. Then we'll throw all the drywall that fell off in the pile and scoot that out to the dumpster. And our skeleton wall is ready to go. A lot easier to move. And it doesn't have all that drywall attached. It'll also be a lot easier to disassemble and inventory for Scott's Lumber Emporium. Now comes the really fun part for me, knocking this all apart so that the nail removing gnome can pull all the nails out of our 2x4s. Give myself one hit per 2x4. Done. Now we need to remove the rest of the wall before a breeze comes along and takes it down. Also, trying not to drop it on our camera system over there. So I'm pretty sure it's going to come down in one big piece. At least that's my plan. And it did. And we just need to pull it over, and it's down. And we're not saving any part of this going straight in the dumpster, but I did bust it open just to see what was inside. They did put some cripple studs in there, but the header was another 2x4. That's probably why it was sagging as well. Now we're going to knock some drywall down from our bathroom wall here. We'd already started before, but this wasn't in our way until now, so we're going to remove it. With our drywall removal tool. Somebody's going to have to clean that up. Won't be me. Now we can pull down our ugly blue trim. I'm not sure what it was with the last tenant and blue, but he picked all the ugliest shades of blue. And from this moment forward, we'll now refer to him as Baby Huey, because if you ever met him, you'd completely understand. And we did find the start of a conduit forest in our wall here. These are just saplings. They aren't very mature. But we're still going to harvest them. Send them off to the hardware store. Somebody's been here before. They did cut them down and attach other conduit to it at some point. But now they're gone forever. We had our other sapling that was further down the wall, and this one was blooming. You can see the flower there at the top that some people call a box and an outlet. And while I was harvesting our conduit, the roaming gnome was filling up the bucket of the bobcat with all of our old insulation that was up above our drop ceiling. We're going to toss this. That's part of the reason our drop ceiling is starting to sag quite a bit. That and the fact that it's really old. Now that our conduit obstacle course is gone, it's a lot easier to get our homemade scissor lift in here so I can get rid of all the stuff in the ceiling that we don't need anymore. Like this wire that I had holding up the conduit that was in our way before. Since we cut that down, we don't need it anymore. And the last tenant, Baby Huey, put this 2x4 up there, and he had a light hanging on it. I took the light down, but didn't have any way to get the 2x4 down. Now I do. And while we're up here, we can get rid of the ductwork for our HVAC unit. Since we moved it to the other room, it's going to have to go out in a different place. We drilled the rivets out of here, but it is pretty rusted together. We'll try hammering it out of there. And at this point, it's not saving it, just removing it.
Where you at?
I'm sure I'm not going to smash any gnomes.
As long as you weren't there.
And now we can remove the gas line. Yes, I did turn off the gas. At least I think I did. We're about to find out. This is all going to have to be relocated to our little utility closet. But we're also probably going to use this gas line because I think I'm going to need a heater over here because this is now going to be in the shop. And the closest heater is about 30 feet away.
Got it? Yeah.
We can pull our elbows out of here. Or at least try. Hercules put this one on. Unfortunately, I don't have enough room to spin both of them off together. So we're going to try something else.
Pipe back over here.
We'll do this the way Archimedes would have. Put our pipe back in there and use that as a lever.
Pull that way. Go ahead. Okay.
And now we can unscrew our lever.
Lift up just a little
If you don't know who Archimedes was, he's that guy that had that famous quote, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." See, I did pay attention in history when it interested me.
Okay.
So our pipe wrench lever wasn't long enough, but putting that pipe in there was. So now that it's loosened up, I can handle it with this tiny little pipe wrench. Get one of our elbows out of there, and that'll give us enough room to spin the other one out of there. And once that one's out, we'll just cap it off there, and we'll let the HVAC guys figure it out from here. And in case you were wondering just how long that lever was, it went from the ceiling about 2 feet up from the floor. So it was about 14 feet long. Now we're going to tighten the cap up there, Jiffy Lube style, and let it be somebody else's problem. Now we have to remove our supply duct for HVAC because our wall is going here and this is going to be in the way. We already removed the drive cleats from the other side of it, and I'm just unscrewing it from the hangers that were up on that beam. So it should just slide out of here. And probably land on top of me. Not as heavy as I was expecting. We'll put that in the pile. We got one last piece of wall. So we have our wall removing tool. Knock the bottom of it free from the concrete. And we'll just poke it And it came off. Just like I planned. We'll truck this right over to the dumpster. So this is what that working smarter, not harder thing is all about. Okay, so I thought the glass door was the last door we had to remove, but we have this Baby Huey door. I guess you can call it a door. It's a piece of plywood with some 1x2s screwed to the other side of it. Like I said, if you met him, you'd know why he's Baby Huey. We have a job for our drywall removing tool.
Uh-oh. It's too long for in here.
Looks like we're going to have to use our subcompact assault drywall removal tool for this job. And this stud looked at me funny, so it's got to go too. We built a small section of wall with a properly framed door opening to stick in here where our Baby Huey door used to be. We built it to some pretty tight tolerances, so a little hammering is required to get it in here. But it's not going anywhere once it's in here. But we'll put some drywall screws in it just to be sure.
I did say a while back that if this glass survived the construction, that I'd let the door stay. And it did, so now the door has found a new home as the entrance to our little utility room here. Now it's got some glass in it, so maybe it's not ideal for this application, but it was budget friendly. So we used the original door frame, the original door, and all the hardware, so it cost nothing. And besides, maybe this will be the new gnome timeout box. When they've been bad, we just stick them in there, and we can watch them and see that they've learned their lesson. The roaming gnome also recommended maybe we could just put a mirror on the back. He recommended dolphins. What do you guys think? We ran all of our conduit and wiring for our outlets, our switches, and our lights in our 2 rooms, and actually 3 if you want to count the light and the switch that we threw in our utility room, so we don't have to work by candlelight, I guess is what you would refer that as. Candlelight's probably brighter than that thing. But we actually put a couple outlets up there. And that's because we ordered our permanent lights, but while we're doing the construction, I got some shop lights that just plug in and then you can daisy chain them together. So since we have outlets up there, we could just plug those in and we don't have to worry about them. They were like $9 a piece. So if they get destroyed while we're working in here, I don't care. They're basically disposable. So we'll put those in there till we're done. And then when we're all finished, we'll put the permanent lights in here that cost considerably more than $9 a piece. Unfortunately, I had to pay for those, but I didn't have to pay for any of the conduit in these rooms. This was all the stuff that we took out of the old building and rooms, and we just repurposed it. So we put the used boxes in there and the used conduit, but unfortunately, when you're using used boxes, there is one downside. Sometimes the knockouts are knocked out where you don't need them. So now I'm gonna have to go around and weld up all those holes. The Grand Ams unfortunately had to get booted out of the showroom along with all the other junk that we've collected in here over the last couple months, and that's because we're gonna need all the room we can get to build our wall here. It's a 45-foot long, 10-foot tall wall, and it's almost exactly where the old wall was, except the old wall had been hacked apart so many different times, I didn't want to just piece it together and then have problems later. Start fresh, build one entire wall, put it up there, and we can just hack it up in the future, I guess. Unfortunately, I don't know that even with all this stuff moved, we're gonna have enough room because we only have about 8 feet there, so we can't set our wall up because it's not gonna fit. So I think what we might have to do is build the wall in 2 pieces, stand it up, join it together, and then put it in place. Can't build it out there and bring it this way because they decided to put some building supports in our way. And this is going to be the most expensive wall we built yet. And that's because Scott's Lumber Emporium didn't have any 10-foot 2x4s in stock, so we had to run over to the hardware store and actually buy them. So it's gonna be my favorite wall, because it's gonna be the most expensive one. The cost of the lumber for our wall really wasn't all that bad. Prices have come way down since COVID. Unfortunately, the cost of the door, well, that hasn't come down at all. It might have actually gone up. So that one hurt a little bit. You're gonna have to sell a few Grand Ams to pay for that. Or maybe some organs. What are kidneys going for these days? We'll look into that in a little bit. But But right now, we need to get some prep work done so that once our wall is built, we can just toss it up. There's nothing worse than building the wall and getting ready to put it up and realizing that we got to stop and do something else. So we're going to do that something else right now so that our wall's ready to go up when it's done. The first bit of prep work we have to do is to get rid of these nails that are in our beam here. They were the kind that were shot in with the little charge, so they're not really just nails and holes. They're kind of fused in there. So we're just going to have to grind these smooth so that our other 2x4 will fit flush against the wall. And then we'll grind these nails off of here that were into our old 2x4. I'm going to try to save this wall. If it gets in our way, well, it's going to die. If it doesn't get in the way, it can stay up there and it'll make our office look a little bit nicer, at least for the time being until we can get to redoing our office. So let's get these nails out of here and we'll move on to our next project.
To grind those out of there, we're just going to use our assault pinwheel of death and dismemberment. But don't worry, even though it has no guard on it, it's still completely safe because I am wearing safety glasses and hearing protection. No gloves. Now we got a couple decades of paint to scrape off of there, so we use our Painter 6-in-1 tool that we have not yet converted to a spot weld removing scraper. But I can assure you its days are numbered, and we will.
The next bit of prep work we have is to get rid of this little chunk of concrete and conduit that's sticking up. These are the ones that used to come up inside of our old wall, which is, since this wall is going back in the same place, it's going to be in our way. We want our wall to sit flush, so that's what we're going to do. Knock this all down so our board sits flat on the floor. So let's get that done.
I knew all those days spent in geology class at dig sites were finally going to pay off. I'm just going to chip out enough concrete to flatten this out. And we'll use our level to make sure that it's at least level, maybe even a little bit lower, wouldn't hurt. We just definitely don't want a bump in there, because we're going to make our wall a pretty tight tolerance, and then it's just more hammering. Everything looks good. We'll just trim off the little piece of conduit that was sticking up here. These are conduit seeds. We go bury them in the yard so we can start our new conduit forest. One more conduit root to remove. This one wasn't too bad. Wasn't mounted up that bad. Look at this guy with the broom. A little light under that level. We'll be all right. We'll just trim off our conduit seeds and we're good to go. That'll be fine. Not sure what they had nailed into this beam, but it's a little bit thinner metal, so we can actually pry that nail out of there. And now we need to trim our old wall. We left this on here in case we wanted to tie into the wall, but because our new wall is going all the way up to the beam, that's going to be in the middle of it. So it won't really help us. We will be able to secure our new wall at the top to the beam. There are holes in that beam. One is actually right above where I'm cutting. And there's a few more spaced out evenly, and then we'll be able to anchor it to the floor. So it should be pretty secure. At least I hope. We got our first wall built. We decided to start with the hardest one. Not because it was the biggest, but required the most thinking. It had a few angles involved here. There's an angle up at the top for that beam. It's not straight across. And there's also a beam that's on the side that's a totally different angle. So we had to do a lot of measuring and thinking. And I'm not good at that. So let's see if it fits. And it did make sense to build our wall in two pieces. Actually, it's going to be more like three, because our top plate, our double top plate, couldn't extend all the way across because the beam that it's being fastened to has a part that drops down where the bolts go through. So we had to basically stop the top plate on this one and start it up on the other side. And then we'll basically connect it with the header. Had we built this all in one piece, it would have been real challenge to try to put it in there. It would have been kind of flimsy. We're just going to tap it into place. Get it nice and plumb. Our biggest concern is the door opening. And we're good so far. So we moved on to the other wall, and the supervisor wanted to check out what we were doing. Of course, she saw work being done, so she ran the other way. She didn't bother to help, because that's what supervisors do. This wall is a little easier. Only one angle at the top, and it was smaller. Well, the heavy lifting's done, so the supervisor shows back up. She's worse than Mr. Spotty. Making sure we're doing it to her liking. Now we're going to make sure we got our door opening right. And if not, we'll just get the saw out. Our door opening was right, so now we can just fine tune it and attach it to our beam up above. Must have been all that supervision. Now we'll go ahead and throw our header up here. This was supplied by Scott's Lumber Emporium. We'll temporarily secure it in place and take some measurements. If they're all right, we'll go ahead and secure it there permanently and put in all of our little cripple studs up above it.
We got all of our electrical moved, we got rid of our conduit obstacle course, and we got our wall that separates our showroom from our shop put up. And just in time, because our door has arrived. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today, so I'm going to leave that in the boxes. We'll unpack it later and get it up next time. And just to prove I'm older than you think I am, really excited about a door. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.